experience, most leaders that I work with start off their understanding of leadership as that leadership is about achieving a result through people. However, there is a sort of a modern trend towards both servant leadership and, by extension, the idea of legitimate leadership. And servant leadership or legitimate leadership is really concerned with inverting the direction of service in the reporting relationship. In other words, the boss is there for the subordinate and not the other way around. Now, if this is true, this definition of leadership has to change. It has to say something like leadership is about achieving people through results. Now, it's not as insane as it sounds, because that's exactly what a coach does. A coach doesn't achieve a result. That's what players do. A coach's job is to coach the player. That doesn't suggest that the coach has no interest in the game that's being played, and he's got no interest in the result, but he uses those two things as his material to coach the play. In other words, the coach doesn't use the player to get a job done and to achieve a result. He uses the result as his means to enable the player. The coach's product is a player, and it therefore suggests that the coach genuinely cares for the player. And this player isn't this care rather isn't just an expedient in the pursuit of a result. This care is sincere. It also means that the coach has a genuine interest in the mental health of the player. And so I'd like us to consider what this means for mental health. And I'd like to introduce you to this man, who's a person who's recently joined our team, a man called Soren Dahm. Soren has had many years' experience working as a counselor for the UN, as a clinical psychologist. And he also has a deep interest in the whole issue of mental health at work. Now, he refers to some research, an investigation that he's done into the issue of mental health. First of all, by referring to the work done by this lady, a person called Professor Renate Schoeman, who is the head of the healthcare leadership program at the Stellenbosch Business School in South Africa. And she first of all speaks about the implications of mental health issues with regard to presenteeism, and the effect of mental health issues on presenteeism. And presenteeism basically means people are physically at work, but they've mentally checked out. And she argues that presenteeism costs an average of 96,500 Rand per employee annually. And this totals to a staggering amount of 235 billion, or 4.2 of the South African gross domestic product. Further to this, absenteeism as a result of mental health issues adds a further 14,000 Rand per employee, or 33 billion of cost of annual sick leave. He also refers to work done by the Harvard Business School, which suggests that presenteeism costs 5 to 10 times higher than those associated with absenteeism, and this is an international cost. And further, he sort of refers to work done by the UN and the World Health Organization, which suggests that in 2020, worldwide, approximately 20% of adults experienced mental illness, that 264 million people experienced depression, and 265 million people experienced anxiety. They actually indicated that there was a pandemic of mental health issues. Now, if one said, well, what does mental health mean? Then one can say mental health, a person of good mental health realizes their own capabilities, copes with the normal stresses of life, they work productively, and they contribute to their community. In essence, if you consider the sort of 4 parameters that we've referred to as the things that people sort of try and pursue in their life, in other words, a sense of security, fulfillment, power, and harmony, then it suggests that a person of good mental health will sort of be towards the right-hand side of the continuum. They'll have a positive sense of security, they'll be fulfilled, they'll have a sense of power, and they'll have a sense of harmony with the world around them. Now, there's further to this, Soren indicates work done by the Black Dog Institute that works on the issue of depression at work. And they refer to a continuum that starts off with people being in a state of crisis. That then sort of means that people are anxious, they have a very low mood, there's absenteeism, they're exhausted, they have poor sleep and weight loss. A step up from that is that people are struggling, which means they're anxious, they're depressed, they're tired, there's poor work performance, poor sleep, and poor appetite. A step up from this is that they're just surviving, which means that they are worried, they're nervous, they're irritable, they're sad, they have trouble sleeping, and they're distracted and withdrawn. Further to this, people can be thriving, which means that they're positive, calm, performing, sleeping well, and in normal social activity. And finally, they're excelling, in which case they're cheerful, joyful, energetic, have high performance, they have a sense of flow, they're fully realizing their potential. If we see this in the context of the Schuitema model of maturation, which suggests that there's an incremental move from birth to death, of being here to get unconditionally to being here to give unconditionally, and the people basically go through 4 epochs through this period. They start off as infants being here to get, going into sort of middle childhood and adolescence, where they kind of, they give to get, which then sort of translates into, moves on to the station of the adult, the working adult, who is basically here to get to give. Most working adults do that. They earn a living for their family, they have responsibilities, and that's sort of to the latter end of maturity, where one is here to give. If one considers where most working people find themselves, which is in this third phase of their lives, there's this phase of their lives is really concerned about outcomes. Getting to give is about outcomes, and it therefore produces an anxiety about the future. So if we see this in relation to the Black Dog Institute's continuum of mental health, and we put our sort of superimpose our idea of mental functioning on top of this, then it suggests that most people are actually kind of somewhere in the middle of this range, which also then further suggests that it's not surprising that quite a significant number of people at work have mental health issues. This sense of stress, therefore, produces a phenomenon which one can refer to as the amygdala hijack. Now, there are 3 significant parts to our brain. There's the amygdala, which is kind of is our sort of most primitive part of the brain, is really concerned with survival. That's where our fight and flight comes from. Instincts come from. There's the hippocampus, which you can refer to as the shock absorber, and the frontal lobes, which, if you like, account for our sort of rational and moral parts of our being. And what becomes apparent is when we're under stress, the boundaries between these various areas of the brain become permeable, and in a sense you get hijacked by your amygdala. And this kind of has a physiological effect. I mean, it produces an adrenaline and cortisone sort of flush in one's body, and the implications of this are the following. First of all, one experiences anxiety and worries. You have this fight or flight response. There's a weakening of your immune system. There's increased blood pressure and strain on your organs. The most common manifestations of this at work are depression, anxiety, burnout, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, when people are depressed, they'll find no pleasure in activities that they used to enjoy. There's fatigue and loss of energy. There's a significant increase or decrease in appetite. There's a sense of hopelessness or pessimism. Their memory is affected. Feelings of guilt or worthlessness rather. There's a sense of irritability and problems with sleep. When people have anxiety, they have racing thoughts, they have sweating, trembling, racing heartbeats, hectic breathing, uncontrollable overthinking, difficulty concentrating, feelings of dread, panic or impending doom, feeling irritable, heightened alertness, problems with sleep, changes in appetite, wanting to escape from the situation they're in, and disassociation. When people have burnout, they'll have emotional exhaustion, they'll be cynical towards beneficiaries, they'll have decreased accomplishment, not caring about work anymore. And finally, when people have post-traumatic stress disorder, they'll have flashbacks, emotional and physical distress. When reminded, they'll be hypervigilant, they'll have a startled response, they'll have a sense of avoidance and anger. What this implies for our understanding of leadership is that if we say the job of the leader is to serve, is to be there for the subordinate, then we've spoken about the role of the leader as being there to care for and grow the subordinate. And when we spoke about this issue of growth, we said growth means to give people the means, the ability, and the accountability to do what's required of them. We've always tried to account for the issue of performance based on those 3 elements of growth: means, ability, and accountability. What this work on mental health seems to suggest to me is that we need to bring the issue of care back into the foreground. Because if people are mentally checked out, it doesn't matter whether they have the means, the ability, and the accountability, they are still going to underperform. And this isn't just because they're just skiving or they're being lazy. They are actually suffering a physiological problem. And that problem is that they are suffering from this amygdala hijack and all of the chemical implications of that and the effect that that has on one's attention.